My name is Tunde Cserpes. I'm a Post-doctoral Fellow at Aarhus University in Denmark. Aarhus is the second largest city of this tiny country, and I got there by way of completing a Ph.D. in sociology at the University of Illinois, Chicago. My research agenda focuses primarily on entrepreneurial careers, ecological processes in markets, and innovative performance. Topics that are central to several research fields such as strategy, entrepreneurship, and organization theory. I would say that the connecting idea across all my projects is that organizations make or break careers, and I'm specifically interested in this connection between the organization, from the organization to the individual. And to that effect, I analyze several empirical fields. And I have papers in the review process using markets from beer distribution, jazz, recorded jazz, and also divorce. The paper that I'm presenting today is creatively entitled Creative Destruction. And I asked the question whether firms affect the divorce of their employees. And the answer that we are giving in this paper is that yes, and it especially so in startups. The good news, however, is that startups are hotbeds of divorce only if employees do it solo. So if also their partner is in a startup, then it seems that riding the roller coaster together can have this sticking together effect, and that these couples actually exhibit some of the lowest levels of divorce. So from an organizational point of view and organizational theory point of view, why this is important is that organizations affect our lives, not only in them, but also outside of them. And we also learned from this paper that participating in organizations, so organizations are anchors, but also differential anchors for different type of people. So we also find that those people who ended up in a startup, despite their inclination to go to more traditional firms, these people have the highest rates of divorce. So we also revisit the old organizations and anchors concept and add that organizations are differential anchors to different people. So we really have to think through how individuals and organizations match in different labor markets to figure out the organization-individual link. My co-authors, Olaf Sørensen from Yale and Michael Dahl from Aarhus. The bigger research project that we are working on is basically putting entrepreneurship back into the labor market as a different career path, and looking at what type of inequalities does it create that now we have more and more entrepreneurial jobs, what kind of jobs these entrepreneurs create to the regular workers who end up choosing entrepreneurship, an entrepreneurial firm instead of a traditional one. So, by the way, our analysis specifically focuses these workers, not the founders per se, although we do control for them in the paper, but we are interested in what happens to the people who are not creating the structure per se, they are being placed within the structure. An entrepreneur would say that, of course, this is the case because different type of people go to work to an entrepreneurial establishment versus a traditional firm. So with observational data, it becomes a challenge that the researcher needs to solve, how to tease out the fact that different type of people end up going to different types of firms. So there is this matching process between individuals and firms that are happening. So in an ideal randomized control trial, if I could do that, I would randomly sort people into large young and small young organizations and see who ends up getting divorced. So this is the ideal experiment, and what we are trying to do with observational data, with the population data from Denmark, is to basically create a research setting in which we try to get as close to this randomized setting as possible. And in order to do that, we use instrumental variables. And we use an idea from population ecology that what ends up happening in basically the demographic characteristics of local markets. So basically the proportion of firms that are entrepreneurial, that are traditional, that belong to the public sector, they differentially are open in a given year when somebody is searching for a job. So what ends up happening is that the macro structure of labor markets quasi-randomly sometimes sort people into firms that might not be their inclination, their individual preference. And this way we basically with observational data, we create this quasi-random experiment in which we can observe people who end up in a startup, not because they wanted to go there in the first place, but because the macroeconomic structure of the labor market was that they were basically pushed. So this way the counterfactual condition becomes that I can compare people who are in a startup without their individual preferences compared to the people who are in large old firms. And this gets us one step closer to a nice randomized control trial, and basically explains away the individual preferences of individuals sorting into firms. So what we see these local average treatment effects, we actually see that compared to the associational results, these results, the coefficients become 2-3 times as large as in the associational biased models, which actually pushes our agenda further, indicating that it is organizations that have this effect on people's personal life, not the fact that they sort into different types of organizations. Basically, we started out with this firm-to-individual nexus, and realized that researchers disembodied the jobs from the firms that created them. And bureaucracy, although it's a really established theory, nobody really looked at a potential positive effect of it. And I would say that, so we propose this mechanism in the paper, and we do mechanisms checks to explain away some alternative explanations. The most important one is that job characteristics matter, and especially in sociology now, there is a really clear line to look at unstable work schedules, work hours, so basically characteristics of the job themselves. So we did some extra care to take a look at it. Plus, we are using Danish data, and this other research mostly uses US data. And the nice thing with our empirical data set is that blue-collar jobs in Denmark are mostly good jobs. So if you work over time, it goes into a money pot that you can get either as money out or as extra vacation. So institutionally, the two countries are very different. So, and even the fact that we still see the differences between startups and large old firms, that indicates that this organizational feature is very prevalent even in the absence of unstable work schedules, for example. Other mechanisms to be considered are the usual suspects coming from other literatures. So for example, maybe it's just a life course. People in different parts of their lives are more or less likely to get a divorce. What else? Maybe it's different industries, but the fact that across models and in the causal models as well, these coefficients do not seem to really do anything to our main research question. Gives us some hope that what we look at, this organization to individual link, is an important one. So I'm trained as an organizational theory and economic sociology person. So the very essence of what I do comes from these classical theorists. So I always feel that when some of my ideas can be traced back to Stinchcomb, especially his 1965 paper, Peter Blau, or Georg Simmel even, that's when I feel that I accomplished something. But at the same time, the realities and the challenges in today's academia is that although these could be the traces where you get your research ideas from, you have to accept that they will not necessarily be in the front end of your paper. They will not necessarily be the hook that will bring people in. And it's because this is a very niche field within the field of management, and you cannot rely on the fact that other people have also read these classics. So I got this advice from John Levy-Martin. He's a sociologist at the University of Chicago, and his advice really stuck with me over the years, saying that he's a pragmatist, and he always says that it should be the story that you are telling that sells your paper, and you know that you created something good if the person who has never read any Simmel, any Peter Blau, or Stinchcomb still buys in to the story that you're telling. Compared to sociology, management has way less ceremonial citations, and this is one of the challenges that people who bring ideas or revive ideas from classical theories have to manage. That in the review process, even if this was the spark, the main idea behind your paper, they might get edited, and as a researcher you just have to accept this.